Okay, so let's talk about vegan nutrition. We have close to 50 minutes to talk about it, and I did bring a presentation, but it's more just to make sure that we don't skip any of the major topics. I believe the reason for people coming into animal rights should not be diet. It should never be our main argument. I think it's the one people stick to, but once you're vegan, you need to know how to take care of yourself. And for a few people, that might be the one argument that will make a difference. So it's good to know what the advantages are, and so that we can tell people in the streets if you feel that that might be one more thing to help them take the step towards veganism. But also we need to know what are the potential disadvantages so we can take good care of ourselves and be an example that veganism is possible. Is there an echo with the microphone, or you good? Okay, because I think I messed it up. So the advantages is that it prevents especially chronic and degenerative diseases, which are the diseases that affect life after a few decades. It's the kind of diseases that kind of build up with time. Vegans and vegetarians in general, many of the studies are focused or have as samples ovo-lacto vegetarians, not as many with vegans, because ovo-lacto have been studied for a longer period of time, so we have a lot of data on them, and there's some data that suggests that when it comes to veganism, it's better. Some suggest that it's worse, especially when it comes to B12 deficiency. But I'll just be talking in general what we know about those two data or the publications combined. Actually, I won't be talking much on this presentation on how it prevents this or that disease, but more on what you should do to make sure you have everything on your nutrition. But what we see in the literature is that vegetarians, they enjoy a better quality of life. So not only they live longer, many studies will show an average of 7 years or more of lifespan. But not only they live longer, but they also live with better quality, or less crippling diseases, like I said, especially because the chronic and degenerative diseases are the ones being prevented. And the difficulties are in potential nutritional deficiencies that once you are aware of them, once you're paying attention to them, they're rather easy to be prevented, to be looked after. And of course, the person has to adapt to the new food routine. So when we look at the potential benefits and the potential damages, the potential benefits far outweigh the potential damages, because the potential damages can be corrected with the right information. The reason why it's more healthy diet is because it is lower in fat, especially saturated fat. A vegan diet is, of course, zero in cholesterol. Cholesterol is only produced by animals, so you won't be eating any cholesterol. You might be eating substances that will cause your body to produce more cholesterol, like saturated fat, for example, which is also present to a lesser degree in vegetables, but you're not eating actual cholesterol. Any diet that will take out animal products and put in more vegetables is necessarily taking out fat and put in more fiber, a greater variety of vitamins, of antioxidants, of protective substances, actually. It might be low in vitamin B12 if you're not eating enough fortified foods, or if you're not taking a supplement. We'll look more into that. It might be low in omega-3 fatty acids. We also discussed that in more detail. Depending on the region you live or your daily habits, your daily routine, it might also be low in vitamin D, in iodine, and in selenium. These slides are looking very weird. Anyway, so these are the topics that we will try and discuss, cover them all. So protein, where does protein come from on a vegan diet? Who knows? From plants. Not from the air, right? That's left on a vegan diet, right? From plants, but which plants are the richest sources of protein? Legumes, right? Also called pulses, right? Which is the bean family. So beans, all colors of beans, white beans, black beans, azuki beans. nuts as well. So those are the two main groups. Just since many people are not, English is not their main language like mine, so let's just list what legumes mean, because it might mean something different in other languages. Like in my language, legume, the word legume means actually cucumber and tomato. So legumes are the plant foods that are from the bean family, right? So that also includes chickpeas, lentils, peas, and soy-derived products, fava beans, right? So everything that comes on a, what do you call that? On a fava bean. In a pod. Pod is... Right. Pond? How do you pronounce that? Pod. Pod, on a pod. Okay, P-O-D. Right. So like if you see the green peas, the green peas, you can see that they are in a pod, and you have the small peas there. Of course, those, when you dry them, they become very small peas. But the beans also are in that botanical fashion. So those are the ones that are rich in protein. They are legumes or pulses. And then you have the nut family, and you can easily identify them because they are usually rich in oil as well. So that means walnuts, nuts, almonds, Brazil nuts, cashew nuts. If you take a seed, will always be in one of these three categories: legumes, nuts, or cereal. Okay, so if you're not sure if it's a nut and you don't have Google at that moment, you can just think, well, if I smash it against a piece of paper, will it stain it because of the oil? Well, that's a nut. If you do that with the sesame seed or with the sunflower seed, it will stain the paper, right? Not with the raw bean or the raw rice. It won't do anything. So nuts are always rich in oil, and they're also rich in protein. Okay, so legumes and nuts. Cereals will help. I'll show it in a moment. Cereals will also help with the protein intake because they have one specific amino acid that is lacking in the legumes. Right? They're not a high source of protein, but they will complete the one piece that is missing in the legumes. Many of you may have heard about the protein complementarity, or the biological value of one protein or another protein, right? You may have heard those terms. And that is referring to the variety of amino acids present in that protein. Because protein is like a wall, and that wall is formed by different bricks. And you not only have bricks on a wall, you also have cement, you have other products that had to go there. So let's think of it, if you only have bricks, you cannot build a strong wall, right? There are parts missing because you don't have the cement or the water to mix the cement. So on vegetables, we will find all the pieces that we need, but they're rarely on a single food. When you eat animal flesh, or even egg whites, you have all the pieces that you need because you just took a wall, which is the muscle of an animal. You're going to disassemble that and build your own wall, but you have all the ingredients there when it comes to amino acids. So it is correct to say that meat has all the amino acids the person needs. But it is not correct to say that plants do not have. You may say that one specific plant do not have. You may say that rice does not have all the amino acids, or that even beans do not have in a good proportion all the amino acids. But if you mix the beans with the rice, then you have it all. Okay, we don't need to get it from a single source. It's not just because meat is a single source that we need to try and mimic that. I mean, if you don't, it means the diet is deficient. So yeah, we will have quality of amino acids, variety of amino acids, as long as our diet is varied. So a vegan diet must be more varied than an omnivore diet. Not only because it usually is already, because we're more interested in, usually vegans will be more interested in different foods with different ethnic influences, but also it must be more varied. Yeah, go ahead.
I once heard that soy has a whole set of the needed amino acids.
Yeah, that's one of the beans. That's the one bean that has all the amino acids. It has soy. Then the next closest one is peas, but it's not totally complete. So soy will have a 0.9 classification, which is almost 1 on 100, and peas will be like 0.6. So then they drop way below. Go ahead. You're right. They will all almost have all the amino acids, but some of them will be in a very low amount. So we just say it's lacking. I mean, you could argue that it's not really lacking because there's something there. But when we're trying to reach a minimum balance level, then that one is just not helping with that specific amino acid. The amount that it has is not. So in practical terms, you can say that it is lacking that one amino acid. I mean, even if you take coconut water, it has all the minerals in it, but it has it in ridiculous amounts. So you can really say it's a source.
Yes, but the amounts aren't ridiculous. I mean, for instance, people often say that that cereals, wheat, for instance, is lacking in lysine. I think yes, that's it.
Yep.
And but it's lacking in the sense that it might have half as much as you would want. I mean, it's not a ridiculous amount.
But that half makes all the difference. Your body would just not function with that half less. Well, but still, it's not a case to try and say that the vegan diet is not possible, because it is totally perfect that you're not just going to eat rice all day, right? You are going to have some other vegetable food, and the only message that you need to get is that, get some beans. We don't need any complicated calculations. So even knowing if it's 10% or half, or we don't want to get to that level of concern, because that was one of the mistakes in the 70s when they started discussing the bioavailability, and it was based on animal experiments. So the need for this one amino acid, or not the one, the methionine, which is the one that is less present in legumes, in rats, is 50% more. So it's only 50% more, but that makes all the difference. So they were feeding rats with less of the methionine, and the hair was not growing as well. So they figured, well, rats are small humans, right? So we need that much methionine in humans. And to get to that level, you need very complicated calculations. You really need to have a lot of care on the amount of foods you're putting on what has the most of that amino acid or less of that one. And it turns out that it's not. We need much less methionine. And by much less, I don't mean like a quarter of it. It's just that 50% more, so we only need 2/3 of what the rat needs, and it makes already all the difference that one can. But that was like the previous knowledge and based on animal experiments. Now you only need to have a varied diet. You don't need to be calculating how much amino. You don't need to know the tables to calculate if you're getting enough amino acid. If you're getting enough calories in your diet, that's already one good step. Of course, it will depend where that calorie comes from, right? If you're getting calories from alcohol and sugar and refined flour, then it's unlikely that you're getting your protein. But if your food is coming, sorry, that one is in Portuguese, but you see at the top broccolis, alfalfa sprouts, tofu, I think you can figure out most of them, right? Cauliflower, cucumber. At the bottom here we have fruits. See, how much protein do we need? What's the percentage of protein from calories, the ratio of proteins to calories that we need in a day? An average person with an average, not an athlete, right, with an average physical activity needs 10% of their calories in the form of protein. So you can only go wrong if you were eating only fruit. That's why frugivorous people who only eat fruit will also have some nuts, right? If you're looking at a raw food, fruit-only diet is never fruit-only. There's also some nuts, which bring the protein a bit higher. Yeah.
What about avocado? I heard it's like the superfood that ticks just every box.
That what?
Avocado just ticks every box.
That it has everything. Yeah. Well, we don't need to find a perfect. It's not a perfect food. It might be good. It might be good in some aspect, but we don't need to look for a perfect food, because that means you only need to eat that one. That one was like the bottled supplement idea that started in the 50s. Like that, let's find that one thing that we can give astronauts, and they can be there for 2 decades eating only that. You need avocados too. It is a superfood, but it's not like the only one that you need. But what I want to point out here is that you can only go so wrong if you're eating only cereals and fruits, because at the moment you put, say, almonds into the equation, or tofu into the equation, even if you're eating a very low protein fruit, then you have a balance. You're certainly up that 10% line, which which would be here. So this percentage of calories derived from protein. So unless those foods are not present in your diet, you cannot go wrong if you are having a varied diet. But of course, you can be eating a variety, but you're eating too little of everything, right? So that's why the calorie idea might be important in this sense. So are you losing weight, or are you keeping your weight? Or if you're losing, it's because you had weight to lose. But if you're keeping your weight, you're not too thin, that means you're getting enough calories. Are those calories coming from a varied diet? Not just cereals or not just nuts, but from a mix of that and legumes and vegetables? That means you're probably okay with protein, very likely okay with protein. So you don't need to be calculating, you don't need to be studying the tables, right? If you have enough of whole foods in your diet. That's like a simple solution, a simple equation, that's something that anyone can take home. Okay, we've talked about this. And yeah, so the point is keep the legumes and the nuts present and your diet varied. Like today at lunch we didn't have much protein. I think it was potatoes and the what else did we eat? Potatoes and there was some broccoli and cauliflower. There was some protein into the broccoli and the cauliflower. Maybe it wasn't broccoli, but whatever green vegetable was there. But it was not enough for one meal. But maybe you had soy milk in the morning. Maybe we're gonna have some cashew cake in the afternoon, and whatever we're gonna have for dinner, and that's okay because then you can balance that. But ideally, we wouldn't have had only potatoes and whatever vegetables we had. Some it would be easy to include. I'm not trying to criticize the food at the conference, which is great, by the way. But if you're doing that at home, it would be very handy to just have a few almonds or Brazil nuts or walnuts and put it on that and put it over what you're eating, and then it's more complete. So what are the sources for calcium then? People have been convinced that calcium is something white that comes from a cow, and it's not. It could be green, it could be many different colors. And so again, those same food sources that already take care of the protein, they're also good sources of calcium. So when you're eating your legumes and nuts because of the protein, you are already eating a good source of calcium, which then needs to be completed by the dark green vegetables, the fruits or dried fruits, and perhaps the fortified foods if you're having them, like juices and vegetable milks. That may be fortified. You don't need it to be fortified just because you are a vegan, but for some people that might be the source or the choice. So as vegans, we will hear that if you're not drinking milk or eating cheese, you're not going to get enough calcium, right? We are likely to be eating less calcium than people who are drinking milk, but it doesn't mean that it is insufficient. It's just less. Maybe other people are eating too much. And also, calcium is not the only factor for bone health. That's why we see more cases of osteoporosis in the countries, in the populations that are actually having more dairy products, that are eating more dairy products. They have higher fracture rates, like hip fracture, the fractures that are related to osteoporosis are more common in the countries that have more dairy, which means that they are also the countries that have more meat, therefore more protein and less of the protective ones, which are the vegetables. See, we don't only need calcium, but we also, for good bone health, and we're talking about calcium balance, that means how much calcium the body retains in opposition to the amount of calcium that it expels from the body daily. It will take in some, it will expel some through your urine, for example. But we need to have a good balance. We need to retain more than we are expelling. So other factors come into play, which is potassium. Right? Potassium is good for calcium balance, and it is present in vegetables and fruits. So all this will lead to the conclusion or the hypothesis, it's not yet a conclusion, but to the hypothesis that we might actually need less calcium if we are eating a lot of vegetables. We might actually not need so much calcium because we have the other protective substances. Yeah.
I read something about water not retaining it.
Yeah. The dynamics there is that milk will also be good or high protein source, and people who are drinking a lot of milk, or the communities or the population that is drinking a lot of milk, is also usually eating a lot of meat, right? The meat is the one that causes, or the protein, the excess protein is the one that causes the body to leach calcium, because amino acids form protein, and amino acids are, of course, acid substances. They have a low pH. Our body, our blood is slightly alkaline. It's 7.4, and the body has to maintain that homeostasis, has to maintain that slightly alkaline level all the time. So whenever there is too much acid substances circulating in the body will resort to alkaline reserves. And the most readily available and in amount, what's the word in English? The one that is stocked in a larger amount is calcium in your bones, right? And your body won't care, that mechanism doesn't care if you're going to get osteoporosis in 40 years, because if it doesn't correct the pH, the acid level, right there, you're going to die. You're going to get into shock and die in a few hours. So it will take the calcium right there. It's just fixing the problem. It's supposed to be a quick fix, but then you do it every day. And then you're constantly leaching calcium, and the calcium does not get reabsorbed. It might actually end up in your kidneys and your English, please. Your joints and your joints. So then you get arthritis or kidney stones. It is the calcium that actually leached from your bones that will end up crystallizing in your gallbladder, for example. Also, yeah. Well, if they're ovolacto, their diet is more likely to be way high in protein, because they're getting that extra protein source, which they didn't really need. Eggs are very high protein sources, and depending on the kind of milk they're getting, especially if it's skim milk, then if it has less fat, it has more protein. Right? They didn't just put water into that milk; they take out the fat. So now, proportionally, you have more protein there. So low-fat milk is actually higher protein milk. So yeah, they're probably getting more, and some amino acids are more voracious. They have a stronger effect on that, and those are the amino acids that are present in meat. They're known as essential, actually, that we actually didn't need to eat. We could have synthesized that, but they're there. The body will have to deal with that. So not only we don't have those things that will compromise, which is excess protein. We need enough protein. We don't need excess protein. That's bad for bone health. Phosphorus, which is of course very present in meat and also in sodas. Sodium. Sodium is not just the table salt that you put into your food when you're cooking, or it's also part of the meat. Right? Blood is salty. It has sodium. The meat has sodium within it. So when you're eating animal products, you are eating sodium even if you didn't put any salt into it. So these are bad for calcium balance. And vegetables are actually low in phosphorus, low in sodium. They're only moderate in protein, not excessive. And vegetables are rich in vitamin K. They're not rich. If they're fortified, they have vitamin D, but you can also get it from the sun. But they're rich in potassium, which are the substances that protect. And if you're eating more meat, that means less vegetables, right? You didn't just put that extra meat. If you put the meat, you left something out, right? You could have occupied that space with vegetables. So that means that meat eaters are eating less potassium, less of these protective substances. So it might as well be that vegans may need, this has not been proven, it's just a hypothesis, we may actually need less calcium. But still, we can get as much calcium as a person who is drinking or eating dairy products. It is totally possible to do that. Another thing that comes into play, something didn't show up there, but for the phosphorus, I actually already mentioned phosphorus, but if you look at that, that's the balance of phosphorus per calcium. So we have, in beef, we have 15 parts of phosphorus to 1 part of calcium. We need 1 to 1. That's the ideal. That's the balance. So if you put something in your diet that is one side of the scale, it's 15 to 1. What other product do you need to put on this side to make it even? You need to put something that is 1 to 15, right? If you want to get an average of 1 to 1. So meat is that heavy. It's 15 phosphorus for each calcium. Now we need to balance it with another food, which is the opposite, 1 to 15, and such food does not exist. Some vegetables will have more phosphorus than calcium. Some vegetables will have more calcium than phosphorus. But they are pretty close to average, so you can actually balance them. But when you put something that is 14 to 1 or 15 to 1 on that scale, you won't find another food to balance unless you're taking a supplement, which is only calcium. So that also comes to our advantage. Vegetable foods are closer to what we need in average. Now, when we're talking about this, we're talking about what is important is the balance, is the average you get to. It's not minimal amounts. If you get too much of one, then it's bad because that means too little proportionally of the other. So you can get a balance by mixing these foods, but when you put that one into play, it's not possible. So you're like all your life, for many years, always forcing your body to try and get into balance by a mechanism that it was not supposed to be used all the time. And now it comes to iron. Do you notice it's the same sources? Remember the protein sources were these two? And these were already the calcium sources, and they're also the iron sources. So those main concern, those that are of main concern, or I should say usual concern, because some of these should not really be a strong concern, but that's what you hear about all the time. They're present in the foods that we usually eat the most, or should be eating the most. So yeah, when you're looking for the calcium, you already got the iron. And there are a few things that we can do to improve iron absorption, only if it's, I'll get back to that, only if it is the case that you might be iron deprived, or that you might have a low iron status. Vegans have a better iron status than lacto-vegetarians. Okay? They might not have as good, or not good, but as high an iron status as meat eaters on average, but vegans on average will have more iron in their blood. Their blood tests will do better in iron if we compare them to ovo-lacto-vegetarians or lacto-vegetarians. Any idea why is that? No tries? It's because milk is totally deficient in iron. Then we can say it's a 0 in iron for dairy products. So if you add to the formula something that is 0 on that nutrient, and it's occupying a space in your diet. If you're a lacto-vegetarian, you're going to be eating the cheese or drinking the milk or eating the cake that was made with the milk. So not only you had the milk, but you did not have whatever would substitute that, right? And you didn't have the soy milk because you had the milk, and you didn't have the tofu because you had the cheese. So you didn't. It's not just that you had the cheese, but you did not have the tofu or avocado, whatever you would have put in your plate instead of that piece of cheese. So those foods would be high in iron. Any vegetable food that is not processed, say it's not sugar or white flour that hasn't been fortified, all of that, all of the whole foods, wholesome foods, will be high in iron. And you put something that is lacking in iron, you're getting less iron. So having dairy products is a luxury, quote, of people who are eating meat, because they're eating a food that is so high in iron that they can have the luxury of eating a food that is totally deprived of iron. But better yet, you can have one food that is already balanced on both things, because the opposite to that is that meat is very low in calcium, and dairy is very high in calcium. So those two kind of complement themselves. If you're eating meat and dairy, then you have lots of calcium on one side and lots of iron on the other side. But also you have no fiber, and you have lots of fat, lots of saturated fat, lots of the hormones and everything that will come with that, not to mention the animal cruelty, etc. And you can have it on a food that is already closer to balance and has some extras, has fibers, has the antioxidants. But you cannot have the luxury then of having the dairy product, because then you're going to be lacking. You didn't have the super source, which is meat, And when I say super source, I think I actually mean the extra source, right? It's an excessive source of iron. Yeah, one other thing about iron is that you may have heard about heme iron and non-heme iron, or some people will say the iron that's present in animal products or the iron that is present in vegetable products. So the non-heme iron is the one that makes all of the vegetable iron. The heme iron is a third, or it is one part of the iron present in animals. So it's just one part, it's not the whole of it, it's just 1/3. And that heme iron is better absorbed by the body. So that might seem like a good idea when you're thinking, people are iron deprived. But it is not such a good idea when people are having access to food and they're doing good in their iron status, because then they will absorb too much. If you offer your body the vegetable form, the non-heme iron, it can better choose whether or not it wants to absorb that. If the iron status is low, it will absorb more. If the iron status is high, it will absorb less. The body is able to adjust to the absorption of non-heme iron. When it comes to heme iron, the absorption is closer to constant. So even if you're doing okay, if you're doing good with iron, and you put it into your system, to your digestive system, the body will still absorb, even though you were already okay or even excessive. The body has no means to expel iron from the body, except for women, because it will come out in the blood, or if you donate blood. That's the only way, so it just accumulates. And so the only way to balance your iron is not absorbing it when you've had enough. And the body can only do that when it comes to the iron that is that makes all of the vegetable-derived iron. Okay? So that's why I said before that meat is an excessive source. It won't allow the body to choose how much it wants. So we have two more nutrients to address. One of them is the omega-3 fatty acids. It is usually overlooked. It's usually not part of a discussion when you're discussing with someone who suddenly becomes a dietitian. Everyone becomes a dietitian in the family, right? When you say you're vegan. Where do you get your protein from? You say, where do you get yours? You go, I don't know, but I want to know where you get yours. Or, what's a protein? I don't know, but I think I should be asking that question anyway. The omega-3 fatty acids is usually overlooked, but it is very important, right? And it's very easy to correct that, to make sure you're having enough. It is very present, especially on flaxseed oil. If you add 2 spoons a day, then you're sure to be having a good balance of that. Because the thing with omega-3 fatty acids, just as we discussed with phosphorus, for example, is to have a good balance in relation to omega-6. You still need more omega-6 than omega-3s. The balance is not 1:1, it's 4:1. But some people will have 20:1. Most vegetarians are having way more omega-6 than omega-3s. We do need more, but closer. It's only 4:1. Flaxseed has actually an opposite ratio. It has 1:4. If we're talking omega-6 to omega-3, it has 1:4. So that's the kind of thing you can put on, even if you're having too much omega-6 in your diet, you put some flaxseed oil, it is able to reverse that balance. It's not that omega-6 is bad. We need that. We even need saturated fat, which is another kind of fat, but we need it in the right amount, right? So when it comes to on the metabolic paths, if you're having too much omega-6, it will take precedence over the omega-3s, and the body might be missing those. So practical note, just include some raw. It's usually sold raw. It won't be sold. There's no heated flaxseed oil, but people might want to cook with them. Don't cook with it. Use it raw. Use it like a table, like you usually use olive oil. Not in the oven, but at the table when the food is ready. You can put it on your hot soup, but not cook it at 100 degrees or more. Because the food you're eating is going to be around 40 degrees at the most, or even colder. So that's okay to use that at the table. If you're cooking or if you put it in the oven, it's way above 100. So avoid sunflower, corn, sesame and peanut oil, meaning you don't need to be asking at your restaurant, the restaurant you usually eat, what kind of oil they use, or never go to an Indian restaurant anymore because they use sesame oil. This will be present in your day, but at least at home, at least on the food that you cook, don't use these because these are high in omega-6. You already have enough on the food. Like if you're gonna eat tahini, if you're gonna eat sesame seed cookie or whatever, there's already omega-6 there. Even though it was not added as an oil, that sesame seed, which is important that you eat because it has calcium, it has protein, it has iron, already came with some omega-6. Now, you don't need to add the extra oil. If you're going to add some oil, don't use those specifically because you already ate the sunflower seed somewhere. You already ate corn, right? So when it comes to oil, let's prioritize the oils that are higher in the one thing that was lacking. Say, for example, the flaxseed oil, and if you're going to cook, canola oil or even soy oil is a better option than those listed below. Does that make sense? Yeah? Yeah.
Concerning the omega-3, there's the issue of the conversion to long chain kind. And it seems that there's some controversy about that, and it's not clear at all. I take the supplements, but I'm not sure at all that they're useful. I've heard that I also give them to my child, my 5-year-old. The conversion ratio varies a lot from one individual to another.
Exactly.
Depending on age, depending on sex, and isn't it a good thing to take the supplements?
What he's talking about, and then we have 5 minutes for questions after the 2 minutes? Okay. What he's asking about is the conversion, because after the omega-3 is not the final stage, or the omega-6, the body still has to break it down to different things, 3 different things for each, the omega-6 and the omega-3. And the conversion ratio, the efficiency with which the body can break, say, omega-3 to the more noble or rare form, varies from person to person, depending on sex, genetics, and different issues. So some people will resort to taking a supplement, which is made from algae, if it's the vegan option, usually derived from algae. It might be a good idea, it might be a safe idea, it's just not mandatory, as if you want to be a vegan, you gotta have that supplement. It might be a good idea if you're concerned about that, but I know we don't have that supplement at all in Brazil, in a vegetable form, so I can say that all vegans there are not supplemented, and we're doing good. But it might be safe to use it, because you might be in that exceptional group. Okay. As for vitamin B12, now that's a different story. Vitamin B12 is not found on plant foods. You got to supplement. You have to supplement. Okay. Will there be exceptions of people who've been raw food for 2 decades and they never took a supplement? Yes. Is it a miracle? No. There will be some scientific explanation to that, but still, there are exceptions. Most vegans who are not supplementing, they will be deficient in vitamin B12, and after a few years, it can be quite crippling. Like you can get up to the point of dementia, paranoia, schizophrenia, say after 5 years of severe depletion. And it's so easy. You're going to spend, I don't know how much it costs here, but maybe 20 euro per year to get your supplement. Now and then you hear, oh, someone found out that alfalfa sprouts has, or that chlorella has, and then you try to test again another lot of alfalfa sprouts, and there's none. So that was probably contaminated, because B12 is produced by bacteria. It is not produced by the animal that people will eat. The animal ate the bacteria. They lick themselves, they lick their partners, their food is not as hygienically prepared or available as ours. The water has bacteria. That's how also our species evolved, right? In a wild environment, in contact with those bacteria. That's where we used to get our B12 from. Now everything is in packages, and we're cleaning our hands, we're brushing our teeth. Eventually, people will take antibiotics at one point or the other. We're not digesting those bacteria and getting the B12 from that. So if you want to jump the loop on animal products, you have to either eat the bacteria or take the supplement. And by eating the bacteria, I mean it's not worth it. I mean, because you're going to get other bacteria that you don't want to. right? So it's very simple. If you're going to do it weekly, just take 1,000 micrograms, supplement twice a week, so 2,000 total in the week. If you're going to do it daily, it's only 10 micrograms. I know it doesn't make sense, right? It should be 70 or 10, but that's how the body responds to B12. If you take it small dosages, you can use it well, but if you take it up to 100, it uses just a small proportion of it. So you can take 1,000. Is it safe to take high amounts? Yes, you could actually drink the whole bottle, or take the whole bottle of B12, differently from other B vitamins, because other B vitamins, you have to actually, the body has to absorb it and then excrete it. So if you take B supplements, the B complex supplements, you see your urine and your skin smells like vitamin B. Anyone has ever done that? Not with B12, because the body absorbs that and then it will come out on your breath, on your sweat. Not with B12. The body does not even absorb that. There are enzymes that are required in order for it to be absorbed, and we only produce a small amount of those. So you cannot have too much B12. You cannot overdose. There's no studies that shows that people have actually absorbed more B12 than they needed. So it's totally safe, inexpensive, and it is the only one nutrient that we actually need to supplement. I am now taking time from my partner there, so I need to wrap up, right? It's time. Okay, but I'll be out there by the stairs, or we can maybe continue with questions there for those who are not staying for the next talk. Thank you.